You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Welcome to the studio, welcome to the microphone, Supreme Court Judge David Ashton Lewis.
Well, thank you as always for having me. Now, thank you too for last week reminding me that we hadn't done Socrates, and obviously I was wrong because I'm sure our sort of lovely listeners would have come in and said, no, Cole David was right, you have done. But so now we're at the scene where we've done 2 weeks of Aristotle, 2 weeks of Plato, and this will be the first, I think, of 2 weeks on Socrates.
Yes, and we are talking, even though we're going through the great philosophers, we are examining the fundamentals or the foundations of democracy, aren't we?
Well, we are really, and then really the only parts of mankind, humankind, who have really embraced democracy are the Western democracies. So why is that? Why did the Chinese not embrace it? Now, I've got to be careful because after the terrible defeat of Japan in the Second World War, they are probably one of the principal parliamentary democracies, and Korea is a congressional democracy like the United States with a president. But it's really And why is it that developed countries, now it's a bit of the chicken and the egg, are they developed because they embrace democracy, whereas countries that haven't or didn't have remained in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes over and over again? But when you look at the countries that you could identify as modern democracies, you can see certain things such as Malaysia, Korea or South Korea, and you can see the difference in them. And so what was it about these philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, that writing really 2,500 years ago had laid down a foundation that if people adhere to, accept it, and they will Koreanize it or Japanese it or they will Australian it. We don't have the same type of approach that the British have in the United Kingdom, yet we're all rooted in that Western democratic parliamentary or congressional method.
Look, the three words that come to mind that when we think of democracy, as opposed to the other options, and some would say benevolent dictatorship or not so benevolent dictatorship, dependent upon your point of view. Look, it stifles initiative, competition, free thinking. And those three items alone allow us to explore ideas, explore opportunities, and whether we're right or wrong, either close that door and walk down another road or open that door and go, that was a really good idea.
What was the third? Free thinking, free competition. What was the third?
Initiative.
Well, no, you said something.
I said initiative, competition, and free.
Well, not so much initiative and competition, because that will come in to the basic freedom of thought, freedom of movement, and freedom of association with people. And so, yes, because when you have anything other than Western democracy, or I'll take the Western out, just democratic parliamentary congressional government, you don't have control, such as in the People's Republic of China. It is a command economy controlled society. I've always felt that democracy grows itself. You never needed to go and force it on people or show it because they wouldn't understand it anyway. It just grows innately in them. So we've got over 1 billion Chinese today, and who are amongst the richest people in the world. And their car-making industry. We have about 5 brands of Chinese cars here in Australia, and if you look at them, They're brilliant.
Oh, look, there's more than that now.
Oh.
I think we're up to 70 brands now, and a lot of those are Chinese.
Yeah, for sure. And so, but here's when you take shackles off people and you say to them, look, you must remain within the law, but you're free to develop free enterprise. And to develop free enterprise, you need to be free in thought. Now, one of the problems for one-party states is there's a limit to how far they will let free thought go, because it ultimately could move to, so I have free thought, do I? Yes, they say. Well, so I'm free to think that you're not the best form of government for the people of China, and I want to form a party that provides an alternative.
Yes, like we've seen in Myanmar.
Yes. Yeah, well, and for those, Burma, as it was previously known. But let's look. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Emphasizing that self-reflection and moral inquiry are essential for a meaningful life. Socrates held that virtue is a form of knowledge, that cultivating the soul through ethical understanding is humanity's highest endeavor. Now, you can only do these things if you have freedom to think. Because if you start thinking about unexamined life, well, you've examined life, and the Communist Party of the People's Republic of China, well, that is everything. And that is the ethical body. Well, then it leaves no room for someone to say, but it's not ethical. You know, I'm trying to examine life.
I'm going to deliver you an ideology and a way of thinking.
Yes. Socrates is best known, of course, for the Socratic method, a form of dialogue involving probing questions to challenge assumptions and clarify concepts. Now, how much of that do we have even in our country today with wokeism?
Sure.
And with cancel culture and with you and allowing someone to clarify concepts? Yeah, you can clarify them provided they agree with us. Yes. So through the Socratic method, Socrates would engage other speakers in discussions about justice, courage, piety. Now, how many people today and faculties at university teach piety?
Yes, that's right.
It just doesn't exist.
I'd almost challenge the younger demographic to actually know what piety
the word means. Well, and piety and other virtues often revealing their lack of true understanding. We have a huge bit of that in the West today. Lack of understanding, lack of examination, lack of, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. We've now moved to, if I don't agree with what you say, you're finished.
You're racist.
And yes.
I love that robot. Oh no, hang on a minute. You don't agree with me. You're racist.
Yes. Now, this approach and other virtues often reveal their lack of true understanding. The approach of Socrates, that approach also failed to, also called Elenchus, Greek, don't know what it means, I must find out that, encourages what is extremely lacking today, critical thinking.
Oh, yes.
Elenchus
fan of critical thinking.
Critical thinking and self-examination. How many people today look, I was wrong. How many people can, no, I'm all right. It's you who are wrong.
No, hang on. Let's go down the road of
I'm just
the narcissist. I'm right and the rest of the world's
wrong. Yes. But the centre point of Socrates' philosophy is you must have an understanding of your ignorance. Correct. So Socrates frequently claimed he knew nothing, which allowed him to question others without arrogance and to expose contradictions in their beliefs. So at least he would come to the diverse, equity, inclusion, say, well, I know nothing. So tell me what this actually means. And then we'd walk to the big thing in life at the moment, how many genders are there? And if a male dresses like a woman, or even if he doesn't, but believes he is a woman, then he is a woman.
Can you imagine if we'd actually placed this entire discussion?
Yep.
The question of genders in front of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Can you imagine what the discussion point would be?
Yeah, the discussion, I think, given that I have a reasonable understanding of these three Greek philosophers, would say, no, that's a fair question. Everything should be questioned. And I can answer it. There are two genders, male and female. They would say, yes, they would have known that then, that gender is based on biological reality, not sociological thinking.
And I think that's the definition point. We can still be male or female initially, and whatever it is from a sociological standpoint needs to be defined as something else, not as gender.
No, I agree. I mean, look, we've lived since the first men stood up, and women, with homosexuality, people who are attracted to their own gender. Now, religion has come up and different societies have treated it abhorrently, current Muslim society. But we've come to a point, I think Socrates, Plato, and Socrates and Plato mainly would say, yes, well, to be tolerant of it, now how much do you understand of it? What is the cause of it? And that usually comes down to a biological question. But there's been court cases ruling, and remember I spoke about that April Ashley, and the English court said that sexuality, sex, gender is based on biological terms and reference, whereas the United States, one of their great Supreme Court justices said no, gender is based on psychological, social and psychiatric preferences. So if you think you were born into the wrong body, that should be respected. And then now it's moved to very great difficulty because of biological men who claim to be and state, I'm a woman, seeking to be changed in women's changing rooms and compete in women's sport. Now we've seen that the Olympic Committee has come out and said no transgender women will be allowed to compete in Olympic female sports. Now that seems to be, to any person, a logical and a reasonable approach. But to us, now to that transgender person who feels like a woman, and those who have gone, like April Ashley, to having appropriate surgical treatment. But the question then, yes, you might be like a woman, you might speak like one, you might dress like one. But the difficulty is you are not one. And that's what happened when she sought to divorce Lord Rowallan's son in 1961, I think, to have half of their estate. They'd been married for about 8 years. But the English courts came down and said, there is no marriage. You have no grounds to challenge. You don't even need to be divorced. You were never married. A man can't marry a man in England in 1961. So these are questions that these philosophers would never have dismissed as absurdity. They would have said, well, if we accept, Socrates in particular, if I accept that I don't know anything,
yes,
I'm prepared to listen, and he calls them interlocutors, that is, others speaking on the other side. I'm prepared to listen. I'm prepared to learn. But one of the difficulties, even no matter how good these brain people were, is that it's very hard to argue against reality.
Sure.
And concrete reality. Not abstract, not questions of I think something. No, there is some things that can be determined on concrete reality. I think this is what these men would have done. And so The it Socrates underscored in saying, I know nothing, wasn't arrogant. He said, because if I claim to know everything, I am arrogant. So the whole idea of proper questioning is humility.
Sure.
Now, how much of that do we see today?
That's right.
We don't see it.
No.
And so, but the difference, now again, like Plato believed in God, but not a religious God, believed in a great creator of everything. Socrates the same. And he was very interested in moral knowledge leading to right behaviour.
Moral knowledge leading to right behaviour. Now, that's an interesting statement in itself to explore. So moral knowledge...
Well, what is it to you?
Well, the word moral defines a moral and ethical viewpoint.
Yes.
Knowledge. So, again, the knowledge needs to be sourced morally and ethically, or needs to have a moral and ethical standpoint.
Yeah, but we've got to define moral. Now, this is where religion has come in at times and helped define things like this, but also come in and wrecked it. Now, but helping define is the question, and the Jews were the first to do it. So is it moral to just sleep with all the women in your tribe? No. Now, of course, Moses thought he was not very successful in stopping this, wife stealing, sleeping with everyone. So, of course, he disappears, comes out of a mountain with one of 10 great commands, thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, probably if we could have Moses here now to say, why did you do that? And he said, because this behaviour was causing conflict. Sure. One man would kill another man because that was his woman. Well, we then moved only to 1888 when women didn't become property.
Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not steal. All of those wonderful 10 commandments.
Yes. So you'd say to Socrates, moral knowledge leads to right action. So if the moral in your group is you marry one man or one woman and you cleave only unto them, you know, the religious ceremony that a woman shall leave her mother and a man shall leave his home, and the two shall cleave as one, forsaking all others unto the one you've married. Now, that's been a battle in human behaviour since the first men. But it came along under the Jewish people, if you like, under Moses. Look, we've got to give some force of legitimacy to this. If I stand up in front of people and say, no, you may only know your wife and your husband, they'll say, oh, yeah, who are you? But if I can disappear, come down a mountain with these carved stones, and the cynic will say, yeah, you carved it. And he said, no, it was God who carved this. And then we see it played out in the woman caught in adultery and Jesus forgiving her. And the thief on the cross who said, leave Jesus alone, he's innocent. Now, I don't know what the actual crime those other two were up on the cross either side of Jesus, probably for some serious crime which would have breached the 10 Commandments. And yet, remember we spoke recently, Jesus turned to that man and said, today you'll be with me in paradise. So then people say, see, there's the reality of God coming down into the life of man. Now, for a Christian, it was a Galilean carpenter who really only lived to the age of 33. But the Christian will say there's absolute moral authority in his life and what he did because he was God, the creator of space and time, bigger than that, in the flesh of a human being. Well, now, what the difficulty facing mankind today, particularly in modern Western parliamentary and congressional democracies, the strength of Christianity now is waning. It has virtually no power. The majority of Australians in the census do not claim to be Christian.
Yes.
They put other.
Or at one stage when you could write whatever you like in there,
Yes.
you were a Jedi.
Yes. But what we're talking about, these are all the things that those three men, particularly Socrates, Plato picked it up. These were the challenges that they were facing in 240, 250 BC. 430 BC. So mankind has a nature that tends to be always the same. And therefore, look at that Korean thing, light and dark.
Yes.
There's light and dark in us. And the moral authority that these three philosophers put really could be said, well, we are challenging in humility, in epistemology, in alankus, in everything. We're challenging you to develop a moral authority, which really means opposing the dark, the immoral in you. And so it becomes really difficult when many people in a society say, well, we don't accept that.
Absolutely.
You know.
David, we've got a few minutes left in the program, and I know we will be tackling this again next week. Bit of a summary.
Well, the summary is Socrates, well, like the other two, but Aristotle was more on democracy. Socrates really challenges the nature of man.
Look, I feel each week that we're building a foundation. So
yes.
we look at Aristotle and Plato.
Yeah.
They built their little bit. Socrates learnt from these guys, took on their thinking, took on their contemplations, and built further on top of that again. And as we walk through this series, that's what we're doing as we get to how we see democracy today.
Yes. Well, naturally. And the questions that they were asking between 410 and 430 BC in Greece, in a country that, was small then, is still small, but they are the questions of mankind. I think we've sadly, since probably the 1900s, as our technological skill developed and became better. I mean, we're now putting men deeper into space than the moon. When you start doing things like that, your focus on physics, chemistry, engineering has to be strong. But what these men are saying is, even if that is the case, you must always keep a part of your attention on, is it right?
Correct.
And how do we establish right? What is the moral authority in Australia today? And I think this is what Pauline Hanson and the more conservative side are saying, even I heard Jacinta Price talking on this, if we don't develop a commitment to Australia and define it, and she got quite short, but don't ask me what being an Australian is. If you don't know now, you've been asleep, So, but if we don't focus on that, we'll become just a place of tribes, ethnic tribes, who will be able to say, I'm an Australian, but what you hold to, I don't.
Absolutely.
And that just evinces danger for the destruction of Australia.
It's a great discussion. I'm looking forward to the next episode. David Ashton Lewis, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Oh, as always, thank you, Cole. And I hope that's been helpful to people. I hope.
Look, I'm trying to remember what was on which politician it was this morning. It's the blonde-haired, bob-haired.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4crb.com.